some are doing $20 million a year, and they're at break even or they're still losing money. Like clearly revenue is not the problem.
Hey Adam, how are you? Welcome.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. Looking forward for our chat. But Adam, before we get started, if you can share like 3 words that are most important to you and why.
First and foremost, family man, which I appreciate is 2 words. I'm going to cram them into one. I am under no circumstance put anything before my wife and kids. That is a very clear priority, full stop. They come first. Second, I would say is curious. And I've been like this my whole life. I have to understand how something works. We were in Mexico this last week. Thankfully, we were out before all the mayhem ensued. And I was walking through this property that we were on, like looking at the lights that were built into the little like pedestals on the ground and trying to figure out how they wired the lights through the thing to get them down the pipes. Like I'm just insatiably curious. I have to understand the underlying schematics of how everything works. The third I would say is durable. And that is something that I earned and I built and I have done very intentionally. And I see that I have done that by selectively going and doing really hard physical things like, 50K alpine trail runs for fun, not to be competitive. I backcountry solo archery hunt big game in Montana where we have big scary animals.
Mhm.
I selectively do really difficult things because it helps me build the resilience that is required to be able to sustain and make it through entrepreneurship. And I was not always good at that,
Yeah.
which I'm happy to get into.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm still stuck on the curious, like the second word. It means that you need to know a lot and need to know everything and also going to the details, right? We know the devil is in the details. How do you balance just going so deep and just running a company and with the founder of Pentane, right? How do you balance going very, very deep but also have the bird's eye view and the holistic view of how to run a company?
It's really hard,
Uh,
to be fair. Like it's really difficult.
that's
I
that's
have to
honest.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I have to set guardrails for myself. For example, Pentane is it started as a SaaS company. It's becoming a lot of different things now, but
Hmm.
I'm not a developer. I shouldn't be doing development. It's really difficult for me to not spend the time to understand like the underlying code base and what it's doing and how it's doing it. But like
Yep.
that is a guardrail that I had to put in place because early on I was spending an awful lot of time in a space I should not be in. Like
Yeah.
there are people, this is pre-AI, like there are people that have spent their whole lives figuring out how to do that thing really well. Like I should just not be in that space. So
Yes.
I have to put blinders on and put up some guardrails so I don't get shiny object syndrome and just do everything.
Yes, I know it's not easy, right? As founders, I mean, we have to wake up every day and say, okay, what we are not going to do today, right? So that's
Yeah.
an important thing to remember. So Adam, many founders and brand owners celebrating always like revenue milestones, right? Well, what do you think? Revenue can be misleading sometimes.
I think that every KPI without context can be misleading.
Hmm.
And revenue is the one that we hear about a lot. I mean, if we've all been at a networking event where you overhear, you're in a conversation with someone, and maybe this has been you. I've always been trying to keep headcount as low as possible. So it's never been me. I've been a lot of other things. Let's be clear. Where you hear somebody, saying like, how's the business going? It's like, great. We just hired 7 new people. Like on what planet is that a metric for success? And revenue hides so much. I mean, you can be running, I know some of them. Like we have companies that come into Pentane that are doing $2 million a year. Some are doing $20 million a year and they're at break even or they're still losing money. Like clearly revenue is not the problem. See, I mean, the context is so critically important. You can walk into a room and say, we made $1 million in net profit this year. It's like, that's incredible. How much revenue did you do? $7 billion. Okay, well, that's awful. I mean, the context is critically important. If you did $7 million, that's fantastic. Good for you. But you have to have context for any KPI to mean anything.
Yes, yes. Explain, profitability versus, let's say, contribution margin, right? Can you break down why it matters more than top line revenues?
Yeah. it's a big question, and I will try to not spend the entire podcast talking about it.
It's okay.
Contribution, I will explain, if it's okay, I will explain what contribution margin means,
Mhm.
because it's one of those words, and I have witnessed this with my own eyes dozens of times. You say the word contribution margin or contribution profit to an early stage operator that doesn't know what it means, and they literally black out for 20 seconds. Like everything that follows after that, it's a scary word and it goes in and out. So when you make $1, when your business makes $1, there's cost associated to making that dollar. There's the cost of goods sold, the shipping, and if you're in an e-commerce business, the shipping and fulfillment to the customer, the credit card fees, the Amazon fees, the Shopify fees, like all the stuff. Well, that number adds up. Let's say it's 50 cents of that dollar goes to that. It's called a variable expense. These are sales related expenses.
Mhm.
What's left of that dollar, that 50 cents, is your contribution margin. So to be clear, in that variable expense is also your paid advertising. So if you're at a 3.3 ROAS, you're effectively spending 30 cents per dollar on acquiring a customer. So that 50 cents now becomes 80 cents of cost. What's left, that 20 cents is your contribution profit, or 20% is the contribution margin.
Mhm.
That's what contributes to the business. At the end of the day, your net profit, how you make net profit dollars, your net profit is equal to the contribution profit, what's left after all those sales costs, minus your fixed expenses or your operating expenses. That is like the fundamental basis for how you make money in a business. Contribution profit minus your fixed expenses equals your net profit.
Mhm. So in terms of, thinking about growth, right? So obviously top line revenues, but it's not just. I think we are not in an era of just growing at any cost, right? I mean, also like investors are looking at differently these days, and it's growth, yes, but smart growth, profitable growth. What are I think the mindsets that are required, or the specific parameters, not just top line revenue, that are important, for any brands out there, or a company, or within actually in a growth trajectory.
There's an underlying, I call this a profit pyramid, and I talk about it a lot.
Mhm.
It's literally just a pyramid. There are 3 parts to it. The base of the pyramid is how your business is financially structured. It goes back to that, your variable margin. How much do you spend on sales related costs to earn $1 or $1,000 or $100,000?
Mhm.
How many employees do you have? What are the healthcare benefits? What are you paying your legal team every month? Like your office, all that stuff is the other side. It's those fixed expenses. Well, the relationship between those two things are critically important. They're everything that lives in that profit pyramid above that is built on that foundation.
Mhm.
The next step up, there's only 3 parts of this pyramid. It's very simple. The next step up, which are critical metrics that we spend a little bit of time on generally, not a ton, but like a little bit, are things like your average order value, your conversion rates on the website, lifetime value, customer acquisition cost. To spend a little bit of time on that. At the tip of the pyramid, where particularly in like a sub $20 million e-com business, they tend to spend 95% of their time is on creating content, trying to get eyeballs, dealing with impressions, arguing about click-through rates, like chasing ROAS. And they can do that extremely well. But if the financial thing at the bottom isn't set up correctly, they can still hemorrhage money. So where you need to start is, and again, like this is what Pentane is entirely built for, but I also spend a lot of time just telling you how to do it and telling you what the math is. Where you need to start is to get a clear understanding of how the business spends and makes money. Because what you spend on advertising dollars to drive profitable revenue is dependent on that information. How those advertising dollars need to perform from a return on ad spend or customer acquisition costs, like the 1,000 KPIs that you can do in marketing, they're entirely, every single one of them. How you make decisions around this is dependent on that information in the base of that pyramid. So there's this really important correlation between the two, but we typically have a tendency to only focus on the one because the other one is scary and it has an F word in it, which is finance.
Yes, and they are obviously interconnected. One is
Absolutely.
influencing the other, right? And Adam, it also probably changes over time in the life cycle of the company, right? I assume they're in a product market fit stage, or in growth stage, or stagnation. What are your thoughts in terms of the various stages? What founders need to to pay attention to in each one of those stages?
In the really early stage, the way that I think of it is like a boat. When you're starting out, you have a small boat. You have a boat, but it's tiny. think of fixed expenses, operating expenses, payroll, all that stuff that we pay whether or not we make $1. Think of those things as weight. I won't call them dead weight because I'm not going to make people sound like they're dead weight. All that can be a case as well. But just think of it as weight. You have a tiny boat. Your boat can't handle very much weight. Frankly, it kind of can't handle any weight.
Yeah.
As your revenues grow, if they're growing profitably, key caveat, the boat grows with the revenue and it can handle more weight. So one of the things that I see really consistently early on is that in that early stage, you start to get product market fit. People start buying your product. You start to generate revenue. And the natural, I think, kind of human response has historically been, shoot, I need to hire people to help me carry on this trajectory because right now we're at 1 million and next year we're going to do 5 and I can't do that by myself. So I need to go and hire 6 people to do that. But they have no idea how the revenue and its advertising performance and all those things that live in that bottom of the pyramid, how those need to change, how they need to adjust in order to pay for those people. So like 3 months later, they've hired these people and they get a P&L and it's a disaster and they don't know why, even though the revenue doubled. It's an absolute disaster. So in the later stages, it's an entirely different thing because even if your margins shrink, I mean, a net profit of 10% at $1 million is $100,000. Like that's fine. A 5% net profit at $50,000 at $50 million is an entirely different ballgame. So the businesses can afford different things. You get economies of scale with respect to manufacturing and things, which brings down cost of goods, which expands that contribution margin because our variable cost relative to the dollar comes down. So there's all sorts of advantages that you get as you get bigger. They're just sort of this really difficult phase. It's like the 0 to 1 is the hardest phase. And then, 1 to 10, 1 to 20 is also, is not easy because you get into this cash flow challenge where you're trying to buy more inventory than you can really afford to buy, but you need it because, you can sell it. So it gets difficult, but those are the critical stage. It's an absolutely critical stage to understand the math inside your business.
Sure. And you mentioned cash flow. It was actually my next question. Obviously, we talked about revenues, contribution, right? Even net contribution and gross margins and variety of parameters. These are all like P&L probably related items. And obviously, cash flow is probably where companies live or die, right? And obviously, in a brand related kind of an ecosystem, we have the inventory side of things, which is probably net cash flow versus cash flow, right? So how do you see cash flow behaviors, right, that are typical to to brands out there, and how is it related to the various parameters that we've just spoke right now?
I mean, the stage in which I can speak of this from 2 positions. I can speak of it from the stage in which we operate with Pentane, which is largely early stage e-commerce brands. And I can speak of it from actually having done it in my last company, which was Bottle Keeper, which is what I built Pentane off of. They're very interrelated. In Pentane, the stage at which the companies are operating at are largely flying blind on a lot of things. And it's not their fault. They just don't know what they don't know. And cash flow is always a thing that is a challenge. Like we're actively building things to be able to help with that. Because if Pentane is telling them changes to make in their business, all of those changes have implications on cash flow. Saying you need to take your ad spend from 10,000 a month to 20,000 and your return on ad spend needs to come down from 8 to 3, but you'll go from losing money to making money. There's a cash flow implication in there, right? It's a big math problem. How we dealt with that in Bottle Keeper, which is that e-commerce business my cousin and I started in 2013. I mean, we grew that to 10 million in revenue, total of 10 million revenue in the first 3 years with no employees, no investors. We got into tens of millions. And when we got acquired, we only had 4 team members and still no investors. How we did that is we managed massive, complicated spreadsheets. We were both good at math. We wrote math to solve the problems and answer the questions that I needed to have as the CEO of the business that was also spending millions of dollars a year in Meta, like me pulling the levers, building the ad campaigns, doing it all. There were questions that I needed to have answered that we couldn't find anywhere. So we just built these really big, complex systems, and cash flow was a huge piece of that.
Nice. So what's the success with Bottle Keeper teach you about scaling that most founders, learn too late, probably?
Staying lean. I mean, it's hard to prescribe the value that comes from staying lean from an operating expense standpoint. at the beginning of Bottle Keeper, and to be fair, this was in the era of, I mean, our first big inflection point was in 2014 when Meta, or it was at the time was Facebook,
Yes.
launched their video ad platform.
Different times.
Because yeah, we got to like, we got to ride that, we got to show our product, which you had to see in action. And it just, I mean, we went from like 150,000 a year to 1.5 or 8 million a year to 8 million a year. Like we could not make the product fast enough, but this is the key point. Even though CPMs were cheap, it was super cheap to acquire customers in those days. Had we been hiring people as we grew that company, every dollar that you're paying a person to do a thing, or that you're paying an office for rent, is a dollar that you don't get to reinvest back into the business. Because we had none of that, we got to reinvest 100% of the contribution profit back into the company, because we didn't pay ourselves for the first 2 years. And granted, we were in a position to do that,
Sure.
but still we could have paid ourselves a little bit and then perfectly fine. And because it produced so much contribution profit, we were able to dump it back into inventory and advertising. So, I mean, you can only do that if you don't have the weight of all those expenses sitting in the company.
Yeah. So that's your just stay lean, right? So it requires like deep learning. Everything is getting so complicated, right? I mean, every niche, right? Both on the marketing, on operation. So today that's the best strategy, just to learn as a founder of everything and do it on your own.
I think that staying lean has always been the best strategy. I think that, there's a cyclical nature to the growth at all costs thing. And now people's, like brains have re-entered their bodies and they've realized that actually growing at all costs maybe isn't the best thing. But I mean, honestly, in 5 years, that'll probably be different. It'll be back. It's just a cycle. Staying lean gives you flexibility. And you just mentioned it, like complexity. You know how hard it is to manage people and teams of people? I took which this conversation started with, like, I am inherently curious. I want to know how the things work. I deeply appreciate that not everybody is like it. So my prescriptive advice isn't that you should never hire a person ever, or that you need to learn how to do every single thing within your company. I mean, I think that is a smart way to do it, because then when you go to hire the person to do that role, you know how to run the role. So you know how to hire the person and manage them. But staying as lean as you possibly can opens up so many doors. It makes things so much less complex. And just know that if you're going to add expenses, not telling you not to do it, these are decisions that you as business operators get to make. As you go and add them, make sure that you understand how the business needs to pay for them. What needs to change in the business to cover that expense, especially if that role is not a revenue generating role.
Yeah.
If they're a salesperson, hopefully they're paying for themselves, and that math is relatively straightforward. But if it's an operations person, if it's it's an assistant, it's pick a role. That's an in-office, non-revenue generating role. Just understand what needs to change to pay for that.
Yes, because I mean, there are a lot of like common practices. I mean, if it's like a very repetitive task, right? Probably you need to outsource it to someone else, right? And just spend more time on thinking, on growth and innovation, right? So that's usually a recommendation. But I understand what you mean by stay lean, and just I mean, definitely today with agents, with AI agents, and a lot of tools that you can do a lot of things right on your own. And you mentioned growing through paid media. What do founders need to learn about paid media? I mean, how do they know that it is truly working? I mean, ROAS is fine, but it's not the only parameters that is relevant, right?
Yeah, I like putting things in buckets. So I'm going to put those things in 2 buckets. What should they do with it, and how do they know it's working, are 2 different issues. From my perspective, what they should do with it is not depend on it. One of the biggest mistakes that we made, like probably the biggest mistake that we made at Bottle Keeper, was because of the timing of hitting Facebook, getting really lucky on timing. That's generally where luck takes place, is in timing. Can't plan for it. It's just something that happens. We got extremely dependent on Facebook and Instagram for customer acquisition. And we got to really, decent scale. We never figured out how to get out of that. And it got really hard toward the end of the business. It got really hard to maintain profitability at scale because we were too dependent on those channels that were, riding a slippery slope. They're never going to get less expensive. I mean, they did during COVID, which was, again, an unlucky thing for the world and a lucky thing for a handful of e-commerce businesses, and Bottle Keeper was included. So figuring out ways to use paid media to supplement the fire that is already burning in your company, but I would be really, really careful to not start the sales fire on paid ads. So that's what I would do differently today than what happened 10 years ago. The second question of how do you know it's working? The answer to that question is contribution profit. The answer to the question is being able to look at the amount of contribution profit from your direct to consumer channels that is being generated in the business and put a trend line over that graph. And is that trend line going up or is that trend line going down? If the trend line is going up, the answer to the question, is it working, is yes. Whatever new ad campaign, new price increase, new discount, new free shipping, new marketing agency, whatever it is, the answer to the question, is that working, is in that trend line over the course of, let's say, a month. If it's going down, it is not working. The amount of contribution profit being made in the business is decreasing, which means you are effectively working on borrowed time. Because the closer that gets to zero, like red alert, danger. I mean, it can go upside down where you get to the point where you're spending $1.10 to earn $1. I see that happen. But you need to know that that's happening while it's happening. So the answer is contribution profit.
Great. So if you identify this negative trend, I mean, what's the next step usually?
I'm deep diving. You got to figure out what's going on. I mean, there's,
Figure out,
is it a marketing performance issue? Is it a pricing issue? Is it a margin issue? I mean, if you're operating a business, let's do like some simple math here. If you're operating a business and not included advertising spend, so let's put that in its own bucket, which is important. And your variable margin is 70%. So like your cost of goods, your gross margins, 45%, then you have 15% shipping and fulfillment, and you have 3% credit card, like all those things, they add up to 70%. That means before you spend $1, you only have 30 cents of every dollar going into contribution margin. And then you run a 15% discount. Like, game over.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're going to crush a 10x ROAS, which even if you do, now your contribution margin is only 5%.
Yeah.
Like, they're just disastrous. So it could be that, we saw companies with all the tariff mayhem going on take on tariffs and not adjust their prices. And that's, you increase the price of the cost of the product by 20%. And you don't adjust the revenue that's being driven from it. I mean, that is a massive adjustment to that margin that, is you can't get out from under. It's just a matter of time. You can't really get out from under that. So
what I mean, operationally on the back end side of things, what changes founders should look for, to unlock more profitability or more, room for efficiency on the operational side of the business?
One drives the other. I mean, efficiency drives profitability. And you mentioned this a few minutes ago. We're in a world of agents. I mean, if you haven't been following along, OpenClaw came out a couple of weeks ago. And, honestly, if you've looked at a computer or a cell phone in the last couple of weeks, you've seen this or heard of it. I mean, it's an entirely game-changing first step in a big technology that allows a non-technical operator. Granted, it's a little bit hard to set up. That will change in like a month. That'll be a solved problem. But it gives you the ability to talk to an AI like it's your buddy or your team member or your employee or whatever. And that AI does all the prompting to all the other AIs. Like, it can do almost anything that a human can do from a blocking and tackling standpoint. Like all the menial tasks and things that we would have historically hired an assistant or an operations person or a this or that, you can now today, you can do the vast majority, if not all of those things for free for a $200 a month, like Claude Max plan. And the thing will work 24/7 and it will run under other agents and it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
That's
So,
crazy.
I mean, that is ultimate efficiency.
Great, Adam. So tell us about Pentane.
Yep. Pentane it's a profitability system that I built out of my experience at BottleKeeper. It's effectively like my experience base and brain in a software platform. So it connects to the financial systems in an e-commerce business, like, their QuickBooks or Loop or whatever they're using. It connects to your Shopify accounts and Amazon and all the places that you spend dollars on advertising. And it uses the financial information to create this understanding of how the business needs to run in order to be profitable. And you set a goal. You say, I want to, we're losing money. I want to get to break even. And it will just tell you what to do. It will say, you need to increase your prices by 7%. Your conversion rate, if you do that, can drop from 2.1 to 1.8, and it's a net positive change. You need to increase your ad budget. If you increase it by 110%, you'll meet your goal at a 3.2 return on ad spend. The last 30 days, it was a 7.8. So that's a reasonable drop. And then in the next phase of that, which is coming out here very soon, probably by the time this podcast airs, is just being able to straight talk to your data. And literally it will tell you in a beautiful British accent, it will tell you exactly what I would tell you to do based on exactly what's happening inside your business. You should cut this, look at this P&L line item. Your margins are tight, consider increasing your cost of goods. Here's a partner that we have that can help add 3% margin by doing X, Y, or Z. I mean, it's very, very, very prescriptive.
Interesting. So how it works? I mean, you are connected to the Shopify. You can companies can import their COGS, CSVs or whatever, and just you have all the data, from all the various sales channels that companies are operating. So you can have analysis of even sales channels by themselves. I mean, how deep do you go to this kind of analysis?
Yeah, it's all API connections. So you just, you click 7 buttons and it connects your QuickBooks and pulls what it needs. You answer some questions, connects your Shopify, your Meta, TikTok, Google, all the things. But again, like the critical piece is that financial basis. It takes the information that it needs, and it builds the base of that pyramid, the base of the profit pyramid. It builds that using math, not AI. This is a math-based logic system, which is critically important. And then it pulls in the data from your Shopify and your Amazon ads and all the places where you're spending and earning money. And it overlays that data on top of that really important financial structure. And then and this is what everything does not do. All the other systems out there today, none of them are combining the finance and the marketing, which is really important because again, that's like the name of the game is the combination of those two. But they're not giving you the answers. They're just giving you data and expecting you to figure it out. And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
So it's very, very guiding. I mean, literally, we have a part of the system that's called a guidance system, where you can go in and make a bunch of changes and see exactly what the impact is on the business before you go and do it.
And this is what is actually required. It's kind of a result-driven platform, right? Because we are overwhelmed with all the data and dashboards and insights. So we don't know what questions to ask to improve something, right? It's getting so complicated.
And that's a really important point. I mean, we don't need more dashboards. Let's be really clear. And the stage at which our clients are operating in that sort of sub 20 million revenue, they don't generally know the questions to ask.
Yeah.
They're not dumb. Like they're fantastically intelligent, motivated, aggressive, like grinder entrepreneurs. Like they are it. They are what it is about. They just don't have the experience.
So Adam, who is your ideal customer profile?
Shopify brands, 1 million to 15 or so. We have some that come on when they're like, we've had a couple come on that are brand new, like pre-revenue. And that works because they get that financial foundation at the very beginning. Yeah. I think it's kind of brilliant.
Nice.
And then we have some that skew a little bit higher than that are just running lean teams that are, it's 7 people running a $22 million e-com brand, which is exceptional. And they don't, they're tired of trying to get the answers to the questions they have through 7 different platforms, which is what they have right now. It's like they pull a little thing from over here and they get a little thing from over here. And then their analytics are garbage because GA4 is disgusting. So they kind of maybe look at that, but they're not a data analyst, so they don't really understand it. It's so disparate at this point. They just want to get the answers. They just kind of want to be told what to do.
Yes. So I think the value is definitely clear. What are some of the probably objections that you hear to give you an opportunity just to answer those objections and, for your marketing as well?
Yeah. I mean, we don't get a lot of objections. What we do get, which is completely understandable, is it takes a while for the trust to build. And I understand that because I have been in their position. Like I had not run their company, and every company is a little bit different, but I've run one that is very, very similar. And you get so burned out from being sold SaaS products. Everywhere you go, you're just getting crushed and hammered with the new fancy SaaS product, the new triple whale, the new this or the that. And they never do what you think they're going to do. So it can take a little bit of time. So our sales cycle, and to be fair, right now, you can't just like click buy and onboard yourself. We will grow to that. But right now you meet with me, we go through it together. I want to understand what the problems are. So it's a very personal experience today. But our sales cycle, it's like they either close immediately and we onboard tomorrow or next week, or they really have to go through like 6 months more of pain.
Yeah.
And get through Black Friday, Cyber Monday and think they crushed it because they doubled their revenue. And then they get their P&L in January and realize they actually made less money on lower revenue the year before because their discount strategy didn't work and they didn't know it. So that was actually a big thing. January was great for us because we had a bunch of companies that we had talked to, in the last half of the year, and Q4 did not work the way that they thought it was going to.
Sure.
And they didn't know it until after the fact, which is just not a great way to operate.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And how the engagement works, I mean, it's kind of a subscription or different packages.
Yeah, the underlying product is a subscription model, and it's inexpensive. It's $199 a month. I did that very intentionally. The goal is I want to be able to help that company that's pre-revenue or that's doing $100,000 a year out of their kitchen. And I want to be able to help as many of those early stage e-com brands as possible without adding a bunch of expense to their tech stack. There's other ways for us to make revenue through partnerships and things like that. So we have some other offerings. I mean, at this point, we're helping some companies with some of their accounting issues. If a company at that super early stage, they're just using a stock QuickBooks account and they have like a kind of bookkeeper that looks at it twice a year, their P&L is a disaster. And again, it's not their fault. They don't know how to use the system. They didn't start a business so they could get really good at QuickBooks. So they don't pay attention to it. So we have some services to help them rebuild a proper P&L for an e-commerce business. I do a little bit of like one-on-one advisory stuff that's really limited. But it's a need that keeps coming up and it helps us inform
100%.
in a really personal way, like what to build and how to build it. And
yeah, I know. I mean, I feel this is also for us as a company, and I hear this from a lot of founders out there that yes, technology layer is important, but services, hand-holding, like white gloves type of engagements are more and more required, just moving to a kind of a results-driven, less on clicking buttons, right, in a SaaS platform. So that's definitely the right way to go. So how people can find you, right, and the company?
you can find the company at pentane.com, pentane.com. And you can find me largely on LinkedIn. I am doing some more social stuff, which I absolutely hate doing. So I'm getting a lot of help with that because it's not where I enjoy spending time, but we're doing it because it's important. We did just recently launch a Profit Masterclass that's free. It's a 14-part series that I go through literally all the stages of how to think about your business and the changes to make within it to operate profitably. And you can find that at pentane.com.
Nice. Adam, anything else you want to add?
No, I think we've largely covered it. I mean, if there's one big takeaway, it's just stay lean. Stay lean.
Nice.
As long as possible.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great summary. Adam, thank you so much. It was really interesting and a pleasure to host you here.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.